Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. Something that we've noticed in the Russia-Ukraine war is the advent or the bringing to the center stage of drones. We saw the first devastating use of drones that was done in the Nagorno-Karabakh war last, I think, 2 years ago, 2021, between Azerbaijan and Armenia, where an entire column of tanks was recorded and shot out of the battle by these loitering drones. A lot of discussion started up in military circles, and a lot of people dismissed the threat. A lot of people played up the threat. After this time has crossed, let's understand where does the concept of drones stand today. To discuss this, I have with me Air Marshal Bedi, who's going to help us understand this entire game of drones, if I may use that connotation. Thank you, sir, for joining in.
Thank you very much, Aadi. Thank you for doing discussion on this topic, very, very contemporary and very, very relevant. And as you can see, I'm absolutely ready, dressed up. And if you zoom in, you will see a global hawk on my lapel.
I could see that, yes, sir.
Yes, absolutely ready and excited about it.
Let everybody see this.
Thank you
sir,
very much.
Let's begin with the birth of the drone. Of course, this particular thing, we know in the Cold War, a lot of experiments were done. We know there were jet-powered drones that were brought up. Soviets had made some of them. The Americans have done a whole lot in this thing. But where did this whole thing start up? What was the concept of the start of the drone itself, sir?
Very interesting. In fact, because we are so embroiled in current drones that, one doesn't pay much attention to how did it all start. And it's interesting to note that, in 1930s, early 1930s, RAF modified some of its Tiger moths to a radio-controlled version. By chaining some of its metal pieces to wood, etc., so that it could get airborne early. And what was the purpose? To give gunnery practice to the crew on aircraft, so that they could practice their gunnery on this aircraft. And what they called it, Queen Bee. This was the model name. And this Queen Bee, one of the models is still, lying in the Havilland Museum in the UK. I was lucky enough to have a look at it. And when you talk to those people, how they got interested in UAV, because while they were giving practice to their crew for gunnery practice, they realized that it was very difficult to shoot this UAV. So they realized that why not use this to advantage? I mean, if it's so difficult to shoot this plane, then probably it can be of advantage. In fact, drone name comes from Queen Bee, because the male Queen Bee is known as a drone. It has origin in the German word. So that is how the drone became popular, because the first one was called Queen Bee. And then the first ever use of drones for reconnaissance was recorded in Vietnam War, as per, history recorded in Imperial War. And subsequently, of course, we have seen the battles that you have mentioned. Then Global Hawk came on the scene when it wanted to supplement the reconnaissance capability of U-2 spy planes. Then post 9/11, the armed version, the Predators and Reapers, they gained traction. But what needs to be seen is that, the development of drones. On one side, you have development of aircraft. If you see, they followed a pattern. They followed a pattern in the sense you had third generation, 3.5. We are all doing that, increasing generations by 0.5, etc. Fifth generation is on, sixth generation may be on the drawing board. And drones started doing that to begin with. They were reconnaissance drones. Then they thought that, okay, why do only reconnaissance? Because, what the reason was, they saw something. They told the fighter aircraft that here it is. By the time the fighters came, there was lag. So the technology came in where they started designating targets. So they said that, okay, I'm seeing it, I will designate there only. Even that lag, when was unacceptable, then they became armed. But somewhere down the line, this traditional progress in drones suddenly jumped. And in my opinion, this is my opinion, that they have started following the trend more of mobile phones. The mobile technology, the way that developed, because we saw very big mobiles initially. Then miniaturization started, and they became very small, and people took pride in saying that who's got the smallest mobile. And then subsequently thought that actually that couldn't do much of a work. So again, the size started increasing. Similar thing is happening in drones. So when they developed, they were doing a lot of work. Then the miniaturization started. We have drones to the size of insect size, and to the global hawk, which is half a football size. But now, what we are watching is somewhere, mid-segment quadcopters and fixed-wing drones, which are on the scene. We'll talk about them when we progress into the talk. But this is how it all started, and this is where we are.
Interesting how the story started. I don't think the first drone, when it was flown, would have ever thought the kind of stuff that it is doing today would be the actual role of an unmanned vehicle, sir. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Today we are talking about loitering platforms. We're talking about what is that, the best friend,
Shahid,
that concept.
best friend.
I forget the term for that. There's just so much development in this entire thing. So let me just talk about two countries that have kind of shown the prowess in terms of making drones and actually deploying drones for military purposes. One is Iran and second is China. Both of these countries have shown some sort of a leadership role within the world. Of course, the American drones are well known. People don't know about the Iranian drones and the Chinese drones and stuff like that. The Iranian one came into focus right now in the Russia-Ukraine war. Everybody was quite surprised, and the Turkish ones also seem to have a bit of a edge in terms of technology. How do you think the world market is kind of has let me just ask you this, has these things been streamlined to a certain thing where one can actually figure out what are the uses of drones, sir? What is the conventional thought process with regards to the same, and what are these countries which are actually the leaders in the market envisaging these drones for, sir?
Yes, of course. You see, like I started saying that how they developed, and what their role was. And when they became armed, take Reaper, okay, they were basically used for targeted killing. The famous incident of General Soleimani, Iranian general, being killed in Iraq, in Baghdad airport, because they thought that he had a role in attack on American embassy a few days ago, and he was considered responsible for killing many Americans. So it was a assassination authorized by the president, Donald Trump himself. And he, in fact, there is a very famous tweet by him when people asked that did America authorize this killing, he just put a flag, American flag, on the Twitter, and later on he said that yes, he was coming. So taking out leadership was what they were doing. But now, slowly, they have become tactical weapons. You see, if you talk of Turkish drones, Bayraktar, that is, we are talking now. Okay,
Hmm.
they were used in the battle that you mentioned, Azerbaijan and Armenia. In fact, their participation in that battle had a was a reason that they had a lot of success in the initial days of Russia-Ukraine war, because Armenia was being supported by Russia. They had whole lot of weaponry which was Russian controlled, and these people had experience of pitching against Russian weapon systems. So when the whole thing started and Bayraktars were used in by Ukraine, they came as a surprise to Russia till their air defenses actually came up to that point, and slowly we saw that they actually slowly went out of scene because they were very costly and they couldn't afford to lose them, and different drones came online. Drone development, yes, Chinese industry in any case has been at it. Earlier one train was too long. Sorry, these are one of the very common versions. And proliferation to Pakistan, their Burak is supposed to be a version of the old Rainbow, and they're different. They could also be buying Bayraktars, etc. And Iran, of course, the Qasif version of Iranian drone was also very successfully utilized in Syria. In fact, it was the few days back we have heard that a few American contractors killed in Syria, which they took it very seriously. So these are the drones. Very interestingly, when drones appeared on the scene, they had a lot of success. I would say not so much because of their capability, but because people took them lightly. Now, in Syrian war earlier days, okay, we came across a news report that a drone blew up a tank, okay, by a hand grenade. Now, very difficult to see that how can a hand grenade blow up a tank. But the fact is, this tank in urban warfare was flying with was operating with turret open. And now, if you have a turret open, this guy came overhead and dropped a grenade inside. Anybody from the road could have done it. But the way it was blown up, that okay, drone blows off the tank. But whereas it was more of a non-following the right SOPs, which were supposed to be followed in urban warfare. Then they changed the whole scenario because the human being was not involved, and the cost benefit analysis was too much in the favor of drones. And now the thing is that a drone, by its designation capability, has turned a legacy gun into a sniper rifle. That is the kind of advantage it gives to people. So who will give away or give up this advantage? So now that is why from that targeted killing that I talked about, they have become weapons of tactical use. You have ISR with them. You can designate targets. They at Shahid, the drones that we are seeing are kamikaze drones, and they can attack. One very distinct difference I would like to highlight, when you talk of ISR or reconnaissance or surveillance, let's say, surveillance is more apt. Satellites can do surveillance, your aircraft can also do surveillance, so many other platforms can do surveillance. But the very big difference is persistence in surveillance, which only drone or these UAVs can give you. This UAV gave you the capability to watch the enemy area for hours and hours together at one stretch. This is the big difference. It's not so much quality of surveillance. Yes, that is important, but equally good cameras can be put in UAVs. Satellites go, everybody knows the visit time of satellites. You can't change it. It's one particular time that satellite, either it's 10 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that it will pass over you, you can halt the activity. And it will go over your area of interest. Revisit times are very large. And it's expensive to get satellite imagery to, with that kind of regularity. Fighter aircraft also can do surveillance, but it's expensive and very short-lived. So this is the capability which the UAVs gave, that it could do surveillance for you for very, very long hours. Okay. And what we talked about, the other roles, target designation that I talked, and this kamikaze attack, 30, 40 hours, it can loiter over an area and choose and pick and choose the target of its choice and go in. So, and what will you do? How will you tackle it? The missiles, air defense missiles, are very expensive, and drones are relatively very cheap. So, it doesn't work out to tackle so many drones with conventional weapon systems. So that is the big change that has come with these people in the battlefield.
Interesting that you mentioned the part about dropping these grenades. We see a lot of these videos coming out of the Russia-Ukraine war as well. So it's become more of I think, an all-round weapon where it's able to do a lot of things and even fight tactical battles on the trench. And that's something which is very interesting to me, sir. So what are the generally speaking, what are the roles that have been envisaged from attack, reconnaissance we've kind of talked about? Is there anything else that the drones are today looking at doing as far as their primary roles are concerned, sir?
We are restricting ourselves to military use, I guess, because a lot of commercial uses is also coming up of drone, and that commercial use will slowly percolate into the armed forces, where the logistics will become a very essential element. You have to carry load. We have all seen that sometimes mules were in service, to carry small stuff on a hilly terrain. So tomorrow you have commercial drones doing that. It will change the scenario, even in military language. But let's restrict to weapon version of it. Now, what happens is what these drones have changed. It's amazing. I find as a practitioner or as a war thinker that people are not bothered today about an armed aircraft. You are not so much bothered about an F-16 or a very heavily armed aircraft or a Su-27 or something like that coming over you as you're bothered about the drone.
Hmm.
So whereas that aircraft can inflict much more damage physically. Why is that? Because your traditional air defenses catered for that kind of threat. A threat earlier, conventional threat, just imagine how did it emerge? One, it emerged from across the border always. So you had your radar chains looking across the border, complete surveillance. You had observation posts as well. And the second aspect was that the threat was at a particular level. It had certain altitude, whatever minimum to the comfort level of the pilot who's flying it, but it was in the air already. You could see it from far away coming towards your side, and you were ready for it. Your radar systems catered for it, your long-range missiles catered for it, and they did not come in so many numbers. You did not expect fighters to come in hundreds and, one after the other. So your air defense system and your radars catered for that kind of threat. What happens with a drone now? Drone can pop up from ground level, from behind a building. Now we are essentially talking of this drone threat developing from inside our borders, which is a very much reality. We know what happened in Jammu. It is in public domain. The drone did land up over Jammu airfield and try to, create some damage. We were lucky not to, it did not have much of a success. But if that is a threat, you can't ignore it. It can tomorrow appear from anywhere, and that is the problem. And there is another character with the drone, what you call LSS type of drone, low, slow, and small. It can be very low. It can fly very slow. It can be stationary. Quadcopter can be stationary, to an extent. Now, all your radars, legacy radars, what we talk of, did not cater for this kind of threat because they never expected a fighter aircraft to be stationary in there. Helicopter to some extent, but still, to do some damage, it had to move forward. It could not, risk it being there up to an air defense missile for very long. So it had to do its job quickly. It could not loiter for so long as this drone can do. So now what has happened is that you are greatly worried about that where will it appear from? It will appear suddenly. It will do the damage, and you have to react to it. So the whole game, the way you counter this drone, that philosophy itself has undergone change or will have to change. So unless you get a competitive weapon to take on the competitive, when I say competitive in terms of capability and cost as well, the ability with which the enemy can launch these drones at me, I should have the same capability to counter with the weapon systems with me. You will not be able to counter them with the air defense missile systems that you have. To fire an S-300 or S-400 is criminal on a drone or something coming. So that is where it is taking people to think.
Indeed, I think Ukraine battles with this particular challenge quite often because it finds itself at the receiving end of a huge quantity of drones. So, but operationally and tactically speaking, there is one use which I think the Russians have displayed of these drones, which a lot of people are. I'm not sure. I've not seen many people talking about it. Is the overwhelming of air defense systems. Uh, the Russians send these Shahids and these other drones in hundreds of numbers, in which are basically overwhelming the system, and on the back of which they send their cruise missiles in. How do you see this change? And till now, wherever the battles have been fought, of course, the air defense part of it has not come out quite strongly. But this seems to be a interesting development, sir. And how would you analyze this?
Yes, I definitely. You see, what happens is whenever when this threat emerged, now I think it is natural that any counter mechanism always lags the threat because the very fact it's countering a threat,
Yeah,
it will lag to an extent, right? because the threat has to emerge, and then you develop a counter system. Now, like I said, since your air defense systems were catering for conventional threat, when these drones appeared and they appeared in large number, any aerial threat, to any ground crew, an aerial threat is an aerial threat. He does not like to see anything in the air coming at it because you don't know what is it going to do, especially when it's coming directly onto you. If I have a very expensive weapon system and if I am directly threatened, then I will tend to use it, irrespective of what is the cost benefit. And incidentally, or air defense systems also, their algorithm is such that, it will take on the threat or a missile or someone which is coming directly at it, it will give highest priority to that. Okay, you may have a 100 times costlier asset lying, on the side of it or next to it. But if something is coming directly at it, its algorithm will tell it that this is the most lethal threat. What happened in this saturation of air defense? Saturation of air defense has always been the aim of warfighters. That you wanted to save or you wanted to prevent the air defense missile coming at your main package. You saturated it by various means. You saturated it by jamming. You saturated it by the presence of anti-radiation missiles, or you saturated it by sheer number decoys, for example. We have heard of decoys coming and then veering away before the main package came. So missile was fired on decoy and then main package could go through. So essence is not changed. The only characteristics of the war has changed by these drones. Now they are going, earlier you had to keep it decoy. Why decoy? Because there was a man sitting inside. So you were worried that, he should not get shot. So you had to take it out prior to some distance before the missile would come lethal. Now you don't have that worry. So you have this system which can go regardless, and it's a threatening that air defense system. So I think what will evolve eventually, as I see, is like I said, you will have to develop cost-effective systems. Maybe in terms of jammers, in terms of lasers, in terms of counter technology. When we talk about it, we can talk it in a little detail. So once those techniques come, then it will be you will be able to tackle this threat. Not that it can't be tackled, but it is just that we are overwhelmed. Only when something some threat develops, something comes on you, that you wake up to this. We all know these. America was flying their aircraft Sleeper Splashless over Afghanistan, over Iraq every year. Then in about 2019-20, I think Iranians shot their
Drone.
one UAV, okay, and they never went there again. Okay, so in that area. So it is now there are different ways to do those things. So I think the counter drone systems or counter technology, which is it's lagging a little bit. Once that becomes operational or that gathers traction, this threat can be countered. I wouldn't say it will eliminate itself completely, because after all, it's a threat. We can, how it can deter this. There are various ways. It's common sense. I mean, no technical knowledge. That if you have a loitering munition like that, Shahid, like what is being used, it's a common knowledge. There are many other forms. Nowadays, Aadi, it has become like this. Names, it's a do-it-yourself. Okay, you can pick up a drone, name it Aadi. I can make a drone, name it GS. So there is no dearth of names in the drone industry. You run out of memory to remember what. But it's easier to remember them or classify them by the role that they play. So you imagine that you have this drone overhead you. Tomorrow there is some repair works going on. There is some concentration going on. You're going to launch some aircraft, and some drones are lurking over your head. What do you do? I mean, unless you have an effective strategy, will you shoot them down? You shoot them down, they'll fall over you. We had a case where three soldiers were killed in Russia. They shot one drone overhead them and it fell on them. So will I accept that if my tomorrow 8-10 aircraft are lined up, for some mission or something, and something appears on top, even if it doesn't, now it's a dilemma. See, it's creating dilemma in one's mind. Do you shoot it down, or do you leave it for it to do the damage? So that is the kind of dilemma which it is creating in people's mind. That psychological effect is very, very potent. And you are going to have all sorts of people working over your 8 feet. It's true for everyone, not only for India. I mean, it's true equally for any country that you have some civilians working, you have some people, and if they are threatened directly, then it's going to be different ball game. Psychological ops, we have seen that what kind of psychological terror it causes by their mere presence.
That's there, sir. And the interesting part is that I think it's a little less understood technology, which is not permutated as far as the vulnerability of uh, tactical formations are concerned, because it has been successful in targeting tactical formations. It has been successful in hitting, as you were mentioning, the Ingles Air Force Base in Russia, where the air defense system did come into action, but when it fell down, it damaged two aircraft and killed three people on the ground. So I guess the unknown factor is also going to create a psychological issue right there, sir. Uh, Sir, what I want to ask you about is the factor that drones today are also, before we come to the countering part of it, because that's the most critical thing, and a lot of people would want to, we'll talk about it at the end of the interview. But I want to ask you about the factor that these drones today have become a common reach sort of a game, where uh, the monopoly of the use of a drone has actually gone into civilian hands. Uh, the civilian hands can be anyone from a terrorist organization to somebody who's trying to deliver medicines. It is a security threat, sir. How do you regulate airspace in such a scenario? And you being from the Air Force, sir, I mean, you would agree with me that airspace regulation will become a huge challenge if you have these things just whizzing around the sky, especially in sensitive areas.
Yes, of course. Earlier we had a problem of airspace management even when UAVs or drones were not on the scene. There were Air Force aircraft flying, there were Army helicopters flying, there were missiles flying. Missiles go up to 30, 40 kilometers now, and they come down. So all this had to be regulated, and now come the drones. Okay. Now you would also appreciate that drones, when we are talking of, they are limited range drones. When they are controlled, small drone, I cannot fly 100, 200 kilometers. It's flying a few kilometers, let's say, which is actually threat that you're talking. Civilian use, when you call, I mean, that's something which can be bought off the shelf, which is not very expensive, but it gets airborne, can do the damage, right? Now, that is radio control, that is being controlled by somebody, even if it is autonomous, it's not too far. What I am getting at is that it is difficult for them to be controlled centrally over a very large area. So you will have problem in integrating their movement or knowing about their movement, that what is happening in which theater. UTM, what they call now, UAV traffic management, is becoming a big problem. You are a lot of people, a lot of industry guys, who are good at algorithm building, etc., are working on it. And anybody who cracks a good system will have a clear lead in this. So it is going to become a huge problem, especially when they proliferate. Forget about civilian use. Even in the armed forces, you read a news, your army is planning to buy some thousands of them in different, because they have a huge border to see and they want to give it to their forward formations. So when they start flying, how do you integrate them? From one theater to other, who's coming? Identification of friend and foe is not yet fully realized even in manned aircraft.
Yeah.
Okay, and between these aircraft, it is going to be extensively different. And let me tell you, when we buy something off the shelf from any industry outside, nobody gives you your signatures on it. Like, he's not making it bespoke for me, that which I can identify from the ground, that okay, this is my drone. Okay, it is one of the many. So a quadcopter looks like quadcopter from visually, irrespective which company has made it. It has no signature. Earlier we used to have classes as youngsters in aircraft identification. that when you got airborne, we used to ORP, that they taught you how to recognize a Mirage 3, how to recognize an F-16 out, and you had to pass this examination in, recognition of aircraft. That has lost its meaning now with these quadcopters coming. Everything looks the same. So, and it's available off the shelf when you say. So regulating their use is a very, very big challenge. There is a drone policy which they have rightly taken out, and fortunately, so they are, paying attention towards the anti-drone policy, which is yet to come out, because they don't want. When we talk of anti-drone measures, you will realize why it is important to pay very great attention towards that aspect. So yes, regulating their use is going to be a big problem, but I'm sure every problem has a solution. So some kind of algorithm or some management tools will come out, which will help that we regulate their use, or we know who's where.
Indeed, sir, as we were talking, the last question would be on the anti-drone system, sir. We see the great powers in the world as well quite vulnerable with these drones. We saw the Americans getting hit. We've seen the Russians getting hit, and we've seen these drones crossing very close to Moscow, as a matter of fact, with the S-400 systems and so-called S-550s and 500s and this and that. I'm sure they're covering Moscow pretty well during this war, but these things are still able to squeeze through and get into the airspace of the opponent. Uh, how do you look at it, sir? Because the conventional wisdom talks about soft kill, hard kill options. Conventional wisdom talks about anti-drone rockets, anti-drone drones, drone plus drone collisions, and whole lot of things. How do you kind of even begin doing a counter drone when it's either a single piece which is flying towards you, or a swarm that comes towards you, sir?
Absolutely. See, they are able to sneak in is true. If you watched that picture where Russian A-50 AVAX was damaged, this drone not only sneaked in and it landed on its radar. You see on AVAX that big chakri. So it came and landed on top of that, before it created damage. So that is the kind of permeability of these systems, because you can't track everyone. But when
It
we
came
talk
and
of
landed. Sorry to
landed
interrupt
on
you.
the,
It came and landed on an
the
air defense system.
system, okay, and now there are the videos available. Okay, now what happens is, if that is the kind of thing, but yes, you have to be at it. Now counter drones, when we talk of it may turn out to be a little monologue, but I'll cover all aspects in one go. Okay, you see, counter is always to technology. So you have to see what technologies the drone used. Okay, earlier when we said that, okay, RF radio frequency controlled drones, someone launched, it was controlling it, like you see these guy marriage drones, the guy's controlling it to, it wants it to go left, right, etc. So it's working on that radio frequency. So first thing which came to mind to people is that, okay, we will jam that frequency. Radio frequency is jammed, so this guy will either lose the track and fall or go haywire, and the operator will not be able to control it. And what happens is, now you see, it's a very interesting game. Now of there is an ISM band, they call it in industrial security and medicine, industrial scientific and medicine band. Okay, the that is 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, or 400 and 900 like that. Okay, all off the shelf drones are available only in this, because that is the ISM band. Okay, now so jammers that are available were also made like that. Okay, but this jammer will be able to take on a compliant operator, right? So if I'm a operator or a adversary which is very ISM compliant, then you can probably jam. Okay, but what do you do to a rogue guy? He's not going to fly his drone being ISM compliant. Okay, so he'll have a different frequency. So the challenge comes: what kind of jammer do you have? You'll have to cover the entire band. You don't know which frequency band it is going to come in. So now the development comes that, okay, you will have a wide range of jammer. Now comes the technology where he says that, okay, I will not use the RF link at all. You can fly through GPS now, or I can pre-program it, what they call autonomous drone. It can go to a particular place, do its job, and come back. There is no RF signal present at all. So he upped the ante. You can do GPS jamming, you can do GPS spoofing also, but it's making you work more. Okay. And now this is the soft kill what we are talking of. Before you do the soft kill, the problem is how do you know where it is? Detection. The kill is second part. One is the detection. Now, detection, like I said, your earlier radar. Okay, it's interesting that how did the drone detection radars came in? Okay, one you will see the drone through camera. I mean, any threat through camera or an IR locator or some other means acoustic, like you hear the noise, but all have limitations. Very they are affected by weather, they are affected by atmospheric conditions, etc. So to cut the long story short, radar became to be the only equipment which will give you complete 3D awareness. That okay, what is this guy doing? And when they wanted to develop radar, what was the drone closest to? The birds. So essentially, the bird detection radars were improvised or modified to act as drone detection radars. So they had S-band radars, which now, why were the bird detection radars? We all have watched that movie, Sully, okay, where the flock of birds entered the engines and Hudson River landing, okay. Now they were all bothered about these migratory birds coming in flocks. So saw you wanted to detect these birds at large ranges, 50, 60 kilometers, that migratory birds, so that they don't affect our aircraft. So particular band radars. Then they realized that no, you need to detect birds closer to airport also, because they can affect aircraft flying on the airport also. So then the X-band radars came in, which could rationalize the picture a little better. So same things they depicted in drones. But the essential difference is what, in technical language, they call false positives or false negatives. As the name suggests, false positive is that when something is not there, you think it is there. And false negative is when something is there, but you think it is not there. So this false negative is very, very crucial in terms of drones. In birds, it did not matter so much, because bird which was present had a small probability of hitting the aircraft. So even if it was missed, I mean, a catastrophe was not, in line. But that's not the case with drone. If a drone goes missing, or goes missing, when I say goes missing from detection, it can be catastrophic. You have to detect every drone. So now the detection radars are improving. So the bands, various bands, their range, resolution, etc., and the capacity or capability to detect it right from ground. All the radars earlier, you could remember, had to detect moving platforms, and they were to avoid the clutter of ground. So they had a phenomenon, threshold marked, where below that speed it cut the clutter. It did not show you any return to say that okay, an aircraft cannot fly below this speed, so anything that flies below this I need not see it, or something which is stationary, okay. And moving target indicators, all this stuff. But with drones, this whole game is changed. This quadcopter, like I said, can be stationary, and now this quadcopter, because it can be stationary, you have to develop a technology which can detect its propeller's movement. Micro Doppler shift, what they call. The movement is detected by Doppler shift. We all know this, and the frequency is important. What you see, on the road, when the traffic camera sees your speed, it tells you are driving at 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers. It's detecting your speed by Doppler shift that you are providing it. But it does not tell you how far you are. So it tells you the speed. So now you have to apply a different technique to continuous wave, the frequency modulation, which tells you the range also. So you need a radar for drone, which not only tells you how slow it is flying, but where is it? So all this, has come in. So having detected, let's presume we have detected it. Now these jammers came into being, that, okay, you have RF jammer. RF jammer will work good, even like especially swarms. What is swarm? Swarm is not that 100 drones are flying just together. They are talking to each other. They are programmed to communicate with each other. Otherwise, how are they maintaining distances, and how are they flying in that particular formation? And it is going to be a little different from what we see on Republic Day or beating the retreat. That is for show purpose. Their tactical application will be very different. So now what happens is if you have a good jammers, invested in good jammers, then they will take care of mostly these swarms or the drones which are using radio frequency as the backbone. But now, like I said, that can be defeated by going silent for a while, or it can take that much autonomous operation that while you're being jammed, it can sustain itself. Then you come to hard kill options. Then lasers come into being. Okay, we it came in papers that DRDO has developed a laser which was deployed on 15th August. It's about a 10 kilowatt laser. It said, but it is still, I think, a lot of work in progress. How much is happening on mass production probably is confidential, but the technology is there. Okay, and next thing in hard kill would come is HPM, high power microwave. That again, a lot of work is yet to take place. I don't think, but high power microwave is little different. It will have a broad area application. You cannot use it in urban environment because it will have spillover. It will be very effective against large front like SOM that you're talking of. Okay, but it will spill over and affect your own people. So unless there is a clear demarcation that this is enemy area and you're not bothered about it, it will be little challenge to use it. But laser is a reality. Like Star Wars, we thought it will only knock off satellites, etc. That whole game has come down now, and you're going to see a lot of it. And last, which comes now from that, if you shoot a laser, shoot a drone over your friendly forces, then it's going to cause harm. So now there are drone hunters, or drone catchers. Okay, you can fire a net from ground, which will capture it. You can fire a net from another drone, okay, which will capture it, and that is what is being developed. There is a lot of technology coming up that way. Autonomous operations, there is a radar which will detect a drone and it will automatically launch the drone hunter, which will now see it by its own camera. Probably tomorrow there could be a radar or a drone, so you never know the way it is going. So it will be able to see this drone and catch it. Now that has two advantages. One, that you don't damage your own forces, and secondly, if you capture it live, then probably you can see what is it, what all did it gather, and
That's true.
what technology is being used, etc. And you take it to a safe place and put it. Then other innovative, not innovative, I mean unique technologies. When you say GPS spoofing, that the guy is misled to think where it is. So it is now steered to a safe place. You know what I said, that I can't shoot it down over my forces. So with GPS spoofing, I can take it to my killing ground. It thinks that this place is there. So once it goes there, now you can tackle it and shoot it down. But only thing is, these technologies have to develop. We are still not buying counter drone systems the way we are buying drones. So once these counter drone systems effectively catch up with the drone technology, and the cost of catching drone or neutralizing a drone becomes comparable as basically shooting them with very expensive missiles, I think it will reach a kind of equation what we have currently between aircraft and the air defense system.
So just the last line, while you were talking, it just struck me, and I said, yeah, this is an interesting thing. Now, when you drop a drone, you're also dropping, let's say, a soft kill landing. Let's take the example of this Reaper that actually fell into the Black Sea. The Russians have not said much, but the technology is, of course, going to get transferred. Uh, how vulnerable do you think these systems are? Because at the end of it, a human interface would have an option of a self-destruct or something like that. These things would be, because of their limited scope of vision, would have a challenge, sir. So
Yes, this Reaper is a very interesting case to study. Okay, this which has been shot down. Now, you just look at it. It may take a while. If you have time, I can,
sure,
give
sir.
my view. This Reaper, let's play the narrative. When the Reaper got shot down, the American narrative was that this Su-27 was making circles around it. 30, 40 minutes it operated, then it dispensed fuel over it. Okay, that you know not only dispensed fuel, they also claim that it hit one of its propellers, the Reaper's propellers. and was damaged, but was able to land at its base. The Russian narrative is that no, we did not do anything of this sort, but the Reaper did a harsh maneuver, and that is why it went out of control and fell into the Black Sea. Right now, when I look at this narrative, or when I hear this narrative, I have a feeling that both these guys are watching it live. The Americans are watching it. For them to say that Su-27 was roaming around it for 30 to 40 minutes, how do you know that? And second point is, like you rightly said, that if I'm the Reaper operator, it has an operator. It is not completely on its own because it's doing a mission. Okay, international area, fine. So if as an operator, I find a threat lurking around me, class of Su-27, which he can identify incidentally. That video that you see, Su-27 appearing from behind and splashing fuel over it, then its camera goes blurred, and then it, sort of falls into the sky. So will I take no action at all? I mean, I will not even vacate the area when I know that this can be damaged. Just imagine how much chance will a Su-27 pilot take to collide with a Reaper. A bird hit, simple bird hit, bird which is a pulp, which has got soft bones. Okay, if bird hits an aircraft flying at 700, 800 kilometers or even 600 kilometers an hour, it can do great damage to the aircraft, especially if it enters the engine. Would he risk colliding with a Reaper? And we hear about mid-air collisions. I mean, when taking place, and we recently had Su-30 case which we heard, or sometimes back those guys benign mid-air collision between two Surya Kiran aircraft. So you can't have a mid-air collision risk mid-air collision in the air. So the point is, it just puzzles me that why that Reaper operator did not take any action, and which comes to a very pertinent question that these expensive aircraft, do they deserve some defense of its own or not? I mean, some air defense, some small jammer, some anti-missile technology, some small flare or something, so that it can avoid somebody coming very close to it. It's very interesting. Not many people know it, but if you go into the history of earlier Iraq, when first time the Americans came in Iraq, 1991, I think they did arm a Reaper with Stinger missile, heat-seeking missile. But what happened? A MiG-25, came and shot down one aircraft where Stinger could not work, because when this Reaper launched Stinger, the missile launched by the MiG-25 had so much plume that it got deflected to that. And they somehow concluded that it is never going to be effective. So they just kind of dropped the program. Okay. But what happens is, over a period of time, when you see the kind of the kind of technology that is coming up in that UAV, the kind of expensive platforms that they are going to be, various companies are making very, very expensive UAVs. So are you going to, not defend them at all, just because there is no human being in that? And just now, we covered the roles it can do, where I made a mention that it can designate targets, or it can provide me persistent surveillance. If I'm going to launch my mission, involving tomorrow, let's say, take the case of India. If I'm going to launch, some 10 Rafales or 15 Su-30s or some Mirage 2000, which are going to depend on a crucial evidence or crucial information given by UAV in the air, then does that UAV need protection or not? Or can we afford to lose it just because there is no man in it? Then what happens to this complete mission, which is dependent on the timely or time-sensitive information or target designation or something which is going to happen by this UAV? So not a full-fledged defense, I would say, but some defense it definitely should have, so that it can vacate that area from an immediate threat. And no Su-27 should be able to come close to it to see what is it doing, to splash fuel on it. And incidentally, how do you splash? We have just gone past Holi, Aadi. You can, even when someone splashes color on you, your instinctive thing is to take evasive action and to avoid it, right? Okay, that is instinct. So here, how will you splash fuel over a Reaper unless it was going very benign, stable flight path? That you have to come from behind it, appear over it, splash fuel, disable it, and do that. So it just fails me that the operator who was watching it did not find it fit enough to even turn to one side or take any evasive action or vacate that area in the 30-40 minutes. You can come back again always. I mean, Su-27 was not going to stay there forever. You have 20 hours endurance. So what's the big deal? So, but it's amazing. So that story, I'm sure there will be a lot of other stuff in that. But as a observer, this is what my feeling would be.
That's it's quite a different perspective than what we hear on TV. So let me just say that, and I
Yeah,
think that's
no,
what
yeah, it is just that I passionately saw it and tried to understand that if I want to be there, both places, I put myself as a Reaper operator and I put myself as a Su-27 pilot. As a Reaper operator, why would I do that? I don't want to cause aspersions or something, but it is, colloquially speaking, I say that it is almost as if the guy has gone to sleep. Not literally, mind you. I mean, I'm just saying that metaphorically, or either way, either he's not watching it and they've seen it in retrospect that Su-27 was working for 30-40 minutes because any warfighter who actively watches fighter threat developing close to a benign aircraft who has no defense of its own, you don't leave it there just like that to be, interfered with. And as a Su-27 pilot, if I saw the aircraft maneuvering, threatening me, coming towards me, you see, what do you lose? Take a case that if you're a Reaper operator and you find this guy is bent upon, killing me. I have no man there. I can, in any case, I'm going to do Reaper. It must have been clear to them that if this guy has come, he's going to do something. Then why not take a little bit of maneuvering, threaten him by your posture that I'll come and collide with you? So if as a Su-27 pilot, I saw this Reaper doing a little bit of maneuvering which was going to threaten, it can't, forgot, it can never match the maneuverability of a Su-27. I'm not
yeah,
saying
you just
it
back
would
off a
have,
little bit. Yeah.
it would have thrown it out of, a Su-27. But my point is, Su-27 would have required at least a missile to shoot it,
Hmm.
not fuel dispensing to disable it. Fair enough.
And
At
aggressive
least you get
maneuvering. That
shot.
that video was
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, you get shot honorably. Yeah? I mean, you get shot by a missile, fair enough, but not by fuel. So this is my personal passionate view
I
about it.
agree with you, sir.
Yeah.
And 19 passes. That's what the Russians claim. That
Claim.
we took
I
19
mean,
passes on this guy and he didn't move.
say he may have watched. Any intelligent pilot would have watched that. What threat does it pose to me? Because can you imagine Su-27 pilot having to eject trying to shoot a Reaper? That it gets into it and damages itself beyond repair. And on top of that, if Reaper is able to recover, can you imagine
Yeah.
the publicity it would have provided? So the Su-27 pilot must have been, conscious of this fact that is this machine going to threaten me if I go close to it? If he's bent upon shooting it, yes. And if they perceived it to be over contested territory and it needs to be shot, there are various means to shoot it. But not like this. A
Hmm.
damaged propeller or, do something like this totally dramatic or, photo op. Again, this is my personal reading. I mean, this has no, as much as I could dig into and apply my knowledge to it, being an operator, I mean, being an operator, not a UAV operator, but having this controlled operations, at least in my different positions, where UAV squadrons were operating under my direct command. So I know how it goes.
Indeed, sir. This is actually quite an eye opener because when people look at drones, everybody's looking. Oh yeah, this is now the next big thing. Uh, People have written obituaries to the tank, and funnily speaking, the same people who write the obituaries of the tank are fighting for giving more tanks to Ukraine. So it's a funny world out
Yes,
there, sir.
yes. People, this opportunity, what you talked, I mean, now this Bayraktars when came, the initial success they had, there was a folk song which came up in Ukraine that it turns Russians into ghosts. The essence of that song was this, that it's turning Russians into ghosts. That folk song became very popular. So people will play up to sentiments and this kind of this kind of cycle. So, but I feel ultimately technology will balance itself. In Aero India, if you went, there was not a stall, which did not have some UAV presence in some form. And I thought, when I saw it, that it was more of a prestigious, or it was a kind of, tomorrow if I don't have something, if I don't have a mobile phone, I'll be looked down. It was something like that. That people will come and say, "Oh, your stall does not have a drone, or your stall does not have a UAV." It was that kind of thing that everybody, every single guy, is just going and startups. I mean, there are, I don't know how many hundreds of startups which are making drones, or something, some drone in the form of something. It's a new game, new arena for definitely, which needs to be exploited to advantage. But I think technology has a way of balancing each other. It will not go totally out of hand. Is my personal opinion.
Sir, all I can say is thank you so much. That was an education, if I may. You've actually brought about certain aspects that one can't research into, in at least in the public domain, because each country is going to keep this technology pretty close to its heart. Drones have been signified as an alternative, not a very great and effective alternative, but whatever, an alternative of not having a great air force for countries like Iran and so on and so forth. But uh, the other factors that you brought about in terms of the kill part of it, and of course this whole Reaper issue, which is uh, confounded a lot of military analysts. It's an interesting game which is playing out in front of us. Of course, India does hear about the drones on the Punjab border and on the J&K line of action control quite a bit, and that's a concerning scenario. And I think that's something that we need to work on indigenously, sir. Thank you so much, sir. This has been an eye opener of an episode, your second episode with Dev Talks, and I hope and we can have many more such interesting discussions. And
Thank you very much.
soon enough do a live session so that we can involve some audience as well.
Yes, of course. And Adi, trust me that this will be such very soon you will want to do another episode because a lot of things would have changed by then, and we'll have more things to talk about
Absolutely, sir.
on this.
We'll stay
But
on top.
happy to be on your show and on varied things, whatever I can contribute to the knowledge level of practitioners. I'm very happy and consider myself lucky to do that. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Yeah.